What if I told you the years of Jesus that seem lost to history were never lost at all? What if the greatest mystery in the Christian story was not hidden by time, but by tradition? What if, nestled in the highlands of Africa, a nation uncolonized, fiercely faithful, and historically Christian, preserved a chapter of Jesus' life that the rest of the world forgot? This is more than history. This is sacred memory, untouched, unbroken, and waiting to be rediscovered. Welcome to Ethiopia, and welcome to a journey into the missing years of Christ. The New Testament gives us only brief glimpses of Jesus' early life. In the Gospel of Luke chapter 2, we see him at age 12, teaching in the temple, confounding the elders with divine wisdom beyond his years. And then, silence. From that moment until his baptism by John at age 30, nearly 18 years pass in complete obscurity. This void has puzzled scholars and theologians for centuries. What happened during these so-called hidden years? Where did Jesus go? What was he doing? Was he simply living quietly, or was there more? For generations, many believed the Bible had nothing more to say. But what if other ancient Christian traditions held the answers? What if they've been faithfully recorded in a language older than Latin, in texts older than the King James Bible, untouched by colonization, and protected by one of the oldest Christian communities in the world? Ethiopia is not just another Christian nation. It is one of the oldest Christian nations. Christianity took root in Ethiopia in the 4th century, before it was the official religion of the Roman Empire. Even earlier, Jewish communities had thrived in the region, making Ethiopia a spiritual crossroads long before Europe came to the faith. Unlike most Christianized countries, Ethiopia was never colonized. Its faith was not imposed, it was chosen. Ethiopians traced their Christian identity to the royal court of King Ezana of Aksum, and even earlier to the time of the Queen of Sheba, who, according to Ethiopian tradition, visited King Solomon and bore his son, Menelik I. This rich spiritual heritage gave Ethiopia a unique perspective, one that was never filtered through Western institutions or political councils. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible is unlike any other biblical canon in the world. It contains 88 books compared to the 66 in the King James Bible. These include not only apocryphal books, but sacred scriptures long excluded from the Western canon. Among these are the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Ascension of Isaiah, the Shepherd of Hermas, the Infancy Gospels, which tell miraculous stories of the child Jesus. These texts are not mere supplements, they are revered, read in liturgies, studied in monasteries, engraved in the spiritual DNA of Ethiopian Christianity. Unlike the King James Version, compiled under King James I in 1611 by a council of scholars influenced by political and theological agendas, the Ethiopian canon evolved organically over centuries, shaped by devotion, not decree. The Gospel in the Ethiopian text contains passages not found in Western Bibles, offering a rare window into early interpretations of Jesus' life, particularly his childhood. Among the most captivating texts about Jesus Christ preserved in Ethiopia are the Infancy Gospels, which recount miraculous events during Jesus' early years. One well-known tale describes Jesus forming birds from clay and bringing them to life, a powerful symbol of divine creativity. Though this story appears in other apocryphal writings, such as the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, its preservation and reverence in Ethiopian Christianity indicate it was seen as a true testament to Christ's divinity from a young age. Another account describes him healing wounded workers like Joseph the carpenter, raising the dead, and performing other wonders, offering a fuller picture of how his earthly mission may have been quietly unfolding in private long before it went public. Some of the most dramatic episodes involve Jesus exerting authority over life and death. In one account, a child who angers Jesus is struck down, only to be brought back to life through Christ's mercy, revealing not just divine power, but a young figure grappling with human emotion and supernatural responsibility. While these accounts were excluded from the Western canon for appearing too mystical or fantastical, they were treated as sacred in Ethiopia. In fact, some of these stories align with the theology of early church fathers who believed Jesus' divinity was evident from the beginning, not just from his baptism. Did Jesus show signs of divine power long before his public ministry? According to Ethiopian tradition, yes. The Book of Enoch, still part of the Ethiopian Bible, also sheds light on Jesus' divine identity, linking him to the Son of Man prophesied to judge the nations. This book was quoted by New Testament authors, including Jude, yet it was later removed from the Western canon. Why? Because Western Christianity slowly shifted toward a version of Jesus that emphasized his humanity first, reserving his divinity for key moments. But in Ethiopia, Jesus' divinity was never a question. It was central from childhood. Contrary to common belief, Christianity in Africa didn't begin with European missionaries. In Ethiopia, it began with Scripture. By the 4th century, Ethiopia had churches, bishops, and scriptural authority. 6th century traveler Cosmas Indicopleustes wrote about Ethiopia's thriving Christian culture. Theological schools, monasteries, liturgies, and even refugee aid for persecuted Christians. Ethiopia became a sanctuary of faith, not just for its people, but for truth itself. In Europe, wars, councils, and political struggles altered the Bible. In Ethiopia, the scriptures were preserved, protected by monks in remote mountain monasteries, far from imperial reach. And among these preserved writings, clues about Jesus' formative years. Today, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church remains deeply rooted in the past while fully alive in the present. They still use Ge'ez, an ancient South Semitic language, in liturgy. They still teach the stories of the young Jesus healing, praying, and even confronting evil, long before his adult ministry. This continuity makes Ethiopia a living museum of early Christianity. Unlike the West, where many ancient texts were lost or banned, Ethiopia never let go of its spiritual heritage. And so its believers have a broader, deeper understanding of Christ. There's something even more extraordinary. Ethiopian tradition doesn't just preserve Jesus' youth, it also claims a direct connection to biblical Israel. According to the Kebra Nagast, an ancient Ethiopian chronicle, the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik I, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Whether historical or symbolic, this story places Ethiopia at the very heart of biblical legacy, and it gives weight to the unique authority of its scriptures. While unconfirmed by archaeology, the legend reinforces Ethiopia's deep biblical connection. Could a nation that safeguarded the Ark also preserve untold stories of Jesus? So what does all this mean? Are the Ethiopian stories historically accurate? That's a question of faith and scholarship. But what they certainly are is valuable. They remind us that the life of Jesus wasn't a series of isolated miracles. It was a continuous journey, marked by purpose, power, and presence from the very beginning. And for Ethiopian Christians, This isn't theological novelty. It's the essence of who Jesus is. Not a man who became divine, but a divine being who walked among us from cradle to cross. In today's world, where faith is often compartmentalized, these stories remind us that God doesn't just show up in big moments. He's present in the silent years, in the ordinary, the unseen, the private development. The Ethiopian tradition invites us to reclaim the whole life of Jesus, not just the public miracles. It tells us, even when no one is watching, the divine is still at work. So what do we do with this? We revisit the roots. We expand our understanding. We honor voices long ignored. The faith of Ethiopian Christians is not a footnote. It's a foundation. And in their memory, the missing years of Jesus are not missing. They are alive, preserved, proclaimed. We invite you to explore further. Let this be the beginning of your deeper walk with Christ, not just the Jesus of the Gospels, but the Jesus of all history, all eternity, all nations. He is not hidden, he is revealed. If this video opened your eyes to a new perspective on Jesus, don't forget to subscribe to Biblical Exploits. Share this video with someone seeking deeper truth.